this is not just a war between monolithic powers, but between people. And you mentioned this is tremendously dangerous politically. You referenced the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. But who are the main personal spoilers then on each side that people should be keeping in mind? And what are their stakes in this conflict?
Well, first of all, if you take Israel, it is a coalition government, and some of the parties in the coalition have as their express purpose and platform Greater Israel. Greater Israel in this context means that Israel keeps control of all of the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, from the river to the sea. That's usually attributed as a Palestinian slogan, but it's basically the platform of a number of the parties in the current Israeli government, and not in a hidden way, in a very explicit way. Often, by the way, with some of these parties, which I regard as extremist parties, based on biblical interpretation. So this is literally, as you earlier mentioned, people who say God gave the Jewish people this land, and so it is a commandment or a mitzvah to keep all of the land. And there are important political forces in Israel that believe that. Probably the two most recognized leaders of that are Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who are two senior cabinet ministers in the current Israeli government. They explicitly believe that Israel should keep all the land and either rule over the Palestinians or that the Palestinians should be invited or forced to leave. So that's their view. That's important because even though they're not the dominant, I'd say, representation of attitudes in Israel, they are pillars of this coalition government, and they are swing votes in power. So they have a lot of influence, and their position is intransigent. I would characterize it as religious nationalism or religious extremism. And it also expresses the will of hundreds of thousands of Israeli settlers living in illegal settlements in the West Bank. Now, some of those settlers are religious zealots. Others want a swimming pool and low-cost land. But the UN Security Council was very clear in 2016. They are living there illegally. These are illegal settlements, and this part of the government represents them. There's another part of Israeli society which says we need to do what we need to do for security. It's not about what God gave us. It's that there's no one to talk to on the other side. They just want to kill us. That's not a small part of Israeli society. I think it's wrong substantively in many, many ways, thinking that the only way to live is by making war or dominating the other, because there are other ways to have security. But that's another view. Then there's only a small part of Israeli society today that openly calls for the two-state solution. So I'd say that there are different views. They've shifted over time. Probably a pretty significant part of Israeli society would abide by the two-state solution if they felt it was safe. And a much smaller part would object to the two-state solution on religious grounds alone. These are shifting patterns after October 7. The fear factor, the idea that there's no one to talk to on the other side, that Hamas is out to kill us, many ideas became even more prevalent in Israeli society, something like what happened in the United States vis-a-vis Islam and vis-a-vis the Middle East after 9/11 is similar. But it's important to understand that there are these differences of view. On the Palestinian side, there are also differences of view. There are those who say that everything about Israel is illegitimate, unacceptable, and reversible, that there should be no state of Israel, period. There are others that say it is what it is, whether we like it or don't like it, but we want to live in our own country, and we want peace, and we want Israelis to stop killing our kids, occupying our homes, stealing our land, oppressing us for where we move, and all the rest. That's not a small part of Palestinian society. Then there are views, by the way, very important throughout the Arab region. And the Arab region has said very clearly since 2002, and it repeated all of this in the months since and weeks since October 7, that what they want is a two-state solution on the 4th of June, 1967 borders, and with that would come a state of peace. That's important because that includes Egypt, it includes Jordan, it includes the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it includes the United Arab Emirates. Now, what's also extremely important is that beyond the Arab Peace Initiative in 2002 is an Arab and Islamic declaration that came in Riyadh in November of 2023 that said we all accept the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002. That included Iran, because it's my view and belief that Iran also will subscribe to the two-state solution and wants peace. So people may dispute that. I live in a world of diplomats. I believe in and work in the United Nations, and I believe that Iran is not implacably opposed to the two-state solution, and said so. I also believe very much in talking with others and listening to what they actually say, not putting words and ideas in their mouths. What we do in the world right now is to say, oh, they don't believe that. And you say, well, they actually did say that. No, they don't believe that. Well, how do you know? Well, I know they don't believe that. This is partly a game and partly a low level of intelligence, I'm sorry to say. If you want to know what others believe, you talk to them. You don't trust every word. I do often quote Ronald Reagan, who said, trust but verify. When you make agreements, you make them with stipulations, with monitoring, with verification, and so forth. But the fact of the matter is Iran has said they sign on to the Arab Peace Initiative. That's very important. Why don't we talk with the Iranians as a result? That's extremely important. But in a more recent article, I wrote, we don't have any diplomacy anymore. This government doesn't talk to anybody except its allies, allies and friends, allies and friends, allies and friends. But, it was actually Shimon Peres who used to say, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. And this is actually a smart observation.